4:03 a.m. The Strait of Hormuz, 11 nautical miles southeast of the Omani coast at Ras Al Had, the narrowest choke point in global energy trade, 33 miles of navigable water at its tightest, flanked to the north by the Iranian coastline and to the south by the Omani Peninsula, through which approximately 21 million barrels of crude oil transit every single day. The water here is shallow, rarely more than 70 meters to the bottom, warm and opaque with the petroleum residue of a million tanker transits. The pre-dawn air carries the chemical bite of crude oil and the salt of the Gulf of Oman. There is no wind. The surface is mirror flat. The USS Bataan, LHD-5, a Wasp-class amphibious assault ship, transits northeast at 11 knots on a heading that will carry her through the Strait's main shipping lane and into the Persian Gulf by 7 a.m. She is 40,000 tons of American naval projection capability, a ship carrying 2,000 Marines of the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit, 18 AV-8B Harrier II attack aircraft, 6 AH-1Z Viper attack helicopters, and 12 MV-22B Osprey tilt-rotor aircraft, a self-contained expeditionary force. Her presence in the Strait of Hormuz is not routine. It is deliberate, a message of resolve delivered by displacement tonnage and firepower, escorting her through the strait. The USS Porter, DDG-78, an Arleigh Burke Flight 2A destroyer, her Aegis baseline 9-point C1 combat system in continuous active search mode, her VLS cells loaded to capacity. The USS San Antonio, LPD-17, an amphibious transport dock carrying additional Marines and equipment, positioned 600 meters astern of the Bataan, and running 4 miles ahead of the formation on the northeast bearing, the USS Leyte Gulf, CG-55, a Ticonderoga-class cruiser with 122 VLS cells and the most capable fire control radar in the surface Navy. Above the formation at 23,000 feet, an E-2D Advanced Hawkeye from the USS Harry S. Truman Strike Group, operating 80 miles to the southeast in the Gulf of Oman, orbits with its AN/APY-9 radar pushing the complete air and surface picture into the Link 16 network. Below the surface, running silent at 180 feet on the formation's eastern flank, the USS Annapolis, SSN 760, a Los Angeles-class fast attack submarine, her TB-29A thin-line towed array streaming astern, listening to every acoustic signature within 20 miles. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had studied American amphibious operations through the Strait of Hormuz for 18 years. They understood that the Wasp-class LHD was a high-value target of a different character than a carrier, less defended by its organic weapon systems, more psychologically significant in terms of its marine complement, and more constrained in its ability to maneuver in the narrow confines of the strait where the shipping lane geometry limited course changes to a narrow band between the shallow southern shelf and the territorial waters of the Iranian coast to the north. The strait was, in the IRGCN's operational analysis, the ideal engagement envelope. The ship could not maneuver freely. Its escorts had to maintain formation geometry in the confined water. The approach axes were predictable. The engagement timing was calculable from the moment the formation entered the strait's eastern approach. The IRGCN's first naval district at Bandar Abbas had been planning this operation for 3 months. The strike package was assembled from 3 separate weapon systems across 2 separate launch domains, airborne and ground-based, designed to arrive on the Bataan formation in a 6-minute window from 4 divergent approach bearings. from 3 prepared positions in the mountains of Qeshm Island, directly north of the transit route. 8 Fateh 313 short-range ballistic missiles, solid fuel, GPS-corrected inertial guidance, Mach 4 terminal velocity, 450-kilogram warhead, CEP assessed at 10 meters. The Fateh 313 was Iran's most accurate short-range ballistic weapon, validated in strikes on fixed targets and designed with a near-vertical terminal descent profile intended to arrive on a ship's deck from directly above the radar horizon of close-in weapon systems optimized for horizontal threat profiles. From concealed coastal launch vehicles at 2 positions on the Iranian shore north of the main shipping lane, 34 Shahed 238 jet-powered loitering munitions, pre-programmed with the formation's projected position at 4:09 a.m., based on observed transit speed and the narrow navigable corridor that constrained the formation's course options to a 2-degree arc. The Shahed 238S would approach from the north-northeast and north-northwest simultaneously, converging on the formation from both forward quarters of the Bataan's approach, and launched from 4 IRGCN fast patrol boats positioned in the Iranian territorial waters 3 miles north of the transit lane. 12 anti-ship rocket-propelled weapons, the Noor coastal variant configured for short-range naval engagement, active radar homing, 65-kilometer effective range, 165-kilogram warhead. The patrol boats would fire their complete weapons load from just inside territorial water boundaries and immediately retreat northward, relying on the constraint of international law to delay any direct engagement of the launching vessels themselves. The combined effect: 8 ballistic warheads from directly above, 34 jet drones from the forward quarters, 12 anti-ship missiles from the north, 54 weapons. 6 minutes, 3 approach axes. In the confined geometry of the Strait of Hormuz, with an amphibious ship that cannot maneuver freely and 2 other vessels whose defensive coverage must be divided across multiple sectors simultaneously, the IRGCN planners had assessed the probability of achieving at least 1 hull penetration on the Bataan at 62%. They made 6 catastrophic mistakes. The first mistake: the Qeshm Island preparation. The 3 Fateh 313 launch positions on Qeshm Island had been prepared over 72 hours. Earth-moving equipment, missile handling cranes, and the distinctive vehicle patterns associated with SRBM deployment had been visible in satellite imagery for 3 days. The NRO's tasking authority had flagged Qeshm Island for persistent surveillance 48 hours before this engagement, and the current satellite pass from 8 hours earlier had confirmed the missiles in launch-ready configuration at 3 separate surveyed positions. The Bataan formation's commanding officers had been briefed on the Qeshm Island threat before they entered the strait's eastern approach. The USS Porter's Aegis had pre-computed Fateh 313 engagement solutions against all 3 surveyed launch positions 4 hours before the missiles fired. The engagement was not a surprise. It was an expected threat from a known location against a prepared defense. The second mistake: the E2D coverage geometry. The Strait of Hormuz, despite its reputation as a challenging operational environment, is geographically compact enough that an E2D orbiting southeast of the strait covers the entire relevant airspace, from the Iranian coast to the Omani shore, from the eastern approach to the western exit, within its 300 nautical mile radar range. The E2D's AN/APY-9 in surface mode detected the IRGCN patrol boat's departure from their holding positions at 3:51 a.m., 12 minutes before the attack initiated and tracked their northward movement toward the territorial water boundary. The 4 boats were logged as Surf Track India, classified as armed patrol craft and transmitted to the formation's Link 16 network. The anti-ship missiles had not yet been fired. The formation new armed patrol craft were in position on its northern flank 12 minutes before the first weapon launched. The third mistake. The Shahed 238 launch signature. 34 jet-powered loitering munitions launching from 2 coastal positions in an 18-second window produced radar returns detectable by the E-2D's AN/APY 9 ground moving target indicator mode at the moment of launch. The turbofan exhaust plumes of 34 simultaneous launches created a radar return cluster that the E-2D crew classified as a mass aerial launch event within 11 seconds of the first vehicle becoming airborne. The formation had 4 minutes and 40 seconds from Shahed 238 detection to the drones reaching their engagement range, more than sufficient for the USS Porter's Aegis to compute 42 individual intercept solutions and sequence the ESSM Block 2 launch order. The fourth mistake, the Noor Coastal Variant Terminal Seeker. The 12 Noor missiles launched from the IRGCN patrol boats used an active radar seeker activating at 30 kilometers from the target. The USS Leyte Gulf's AN/SPY 1A fire control radar, operating in its track while scan mode, had been monitoring the patrol boats' electromagnetic emissions from the moment they departed their holding positions, and had characterized the Noor Seeker's frequency band during a previous engagement 6 months earlier. The USS Porter's AN/SLQ 32V6 electronic warfare system activated its structured jamming in the Noor's Seeker acquisition band at 4:03 a.m. and 41 seconds, 11 seconds after the missiles launched and 19 seconds before their seekers were scheduled to activate. Of 12 Noor missiles, 7 lost seeker coherence to the jamming and diverted toward electronic ghost targets positioned by the SLQ-32 between 4 and 9 miles south of the actual formation. 5 retained partial seeker lock. The fifth mistake, the territorial water firing position. The 4 IRGCN patrol boats had fired from inside Iranian territorial waters, a position chosen to complicate American engagement authority under international law. What the IRGCN planners had not modeled was the USS Annapolis, the Los Angeles-class submarine, running silent on the formation's eastern flank, had been tracking all 4 patrol boats acoustically since 3:48 a.m. Her commanding officer had a targeting solution ready before the first Noor launched. The fire authorization would come. The Annapolis would not wait long. The sixth mistake was the fundamental miscalculation at the heart of every IRGCN attack on American naval forces in the Strait. The belief that the confined geometry of the Hormuz choke point was an advantage for the attacker. It was not. The confined geometry meant the formation's position was predictable, but it also meant the IRGCN's launch positions were predictable. Their approach bearings were limited to the angles consistent with the Strait's geography, and their weapons had to converge through a 3-dimensional space that the Leyte Gulf's SPY-1A and the Porter's SPY-1D had been scanning without interruption for 4 hours. Every square mile of relevant airspace in the Strait of Hormuz was inside the fire control radar coverage of at least 2 American ships simultaneously. There was nowhere for the weapons to come from that was not already being watched. At 4:03 a.m. and 22 seconds, 22 seconds after the first Fateh 313 ignited on Qeshm Island, The formation-wide weapons free authorization transmits. All units, Leyte Gulf. Weapons free all threat axes. Execute Strike Group Defense Plan Hormuz Alpha. The USS Leyte Gulf fires first against the 8 Fateh 313 ballistic tracks. 14 SM-2 Block 3B missiles launch from the cruiser's forward and aft VLS cells in a 12-second ripple, climbing vertically before tilting north-northeast toward the inbound ballistic tracks rising from Qeshm Island. The SM-2 Block 3B's infrared terminal seeker acquires each Fateh 313 re-entry vehicle in its final descent phase. The kinetic heating of the warhead at Mach 4 in the lower atmosphere produces a thermal signature that the SM-2 seeker tracks with high precision in the clear pre-dawn air over the strait. 6 intercepts on the first salvo at altitudes between 14 and 27 kilometers above the strait. 2 Fateh 313 warheads survive the initial SM-2 salvo. 1 because the warhead's terminal maneuver shifted its descent angle by 7 degrees in the final 4 seconds. 1 because a guidance anomaly altered its trajectory to an approach angle not covered by the pre-computed intercept solution. The USS Porter fires 4 SM-6 dual-eye missiles against both survivors. The SM-6's expanded engagement envelope and active radar seeker in dual-mode configuration handles both remaining tracks. Both intercepted. Detonation at 11 and 14 kilometers altitude. The fragments fall into the strait. No warhead reaches the surface. 8 Fateh 313 warheads. All 8 eliminated. Time elapsed from first Fateh 313 launch to last intercept. 3 minutes and 44 seconds. The 34 Shahed 238 jet loitering munitions approach from the north-northeast and north-northwest in 2 converging streams, their turbofan engines burning at 350 kilometers per hour. Their pre-programmed approach course is set to converge on the Bataan's projected position from her forward quarters simultaneously. The USS Porter engages the northeast stream with 30 ESSM Block 2 missiles fired in a 44-second sustained salvo. 1 interceptor per target across 20 targets, with 10 additional rounds covering the 6 highest priority threats with a backup interceptor each. 22 intercepts. 6 Shahed 238 DS survived the first ESSM salvo on the northeast axis. The USS Leyte Gulf, having completed her Fateh 313 engagement, reorients her fire control to the northwest stream and fires 24 ESSM Block 2 against 14 Shahed 238 targets. 12 intercepts. 2 Shahed 238S survive the cruiser's first ESSM engagement on the northwest axis. 8 Shahed 238 survivors converging from both angles. The USS Bataan's own defensive systems engage. The LHD carries 2 Phalanx Block 1 BCIWS systems, 1 forward, 1 aft, and a RAM Mark 49 launcher on each sponson. The forward Phalanx acquires 4 of the northeast axis survivors at 1,800 meters. Sequential bursts. 4 vehicles rendered inoperable between 1,900 and 1,300 meters. The port RAM launcher fires 5 rolling airframe missiles against the remaining 2 northeast axis Shaheds at 4 nautical miles. Both intercepted. The 2 northwest axis survivors, approaching from a slightly different bearing that places them in the Bataan's port forward arc, are engaged by the port RAM launcher's remaining missiles. 1 intercept at 3 nautical miles. 1 Shahed 238 reaches 1,200 meters from the Bataan's port side. the final survivor of 34 vehicles, running at 350 kilometers per hour at 90 meters altitude. The aft Phalanx CYWS slews to the bearing and fires a half-second burst. Inoperable at 900 meters. The vehicle impacts the water 140 meters off the Bataan's port quarter. Its shaped charge warhead detonates on water impact. The explosion is large and close. Spray reaches the Bataan's flight deck. No structural damage. No personnel casualties. The watch officer notes the impact point in his log. The 5 Noor missiles that retained partial seeker lock continue inbound from the north. 3 are tracking the Bataan. 2 are tracking the USS Porter. The USS Leyte Gulf, fire control now fully reoriented from the Fateh 313 engagement, fires 10 SM-2 Block 3B missiles against the 5 Noor tracks. 2 per target. All 5 Noor missiles intercepted at ranges between 6 and 13 nautical miles from their respective aim ships. The SM-2's infrared terminal mode acquires each Noor's turbofan exhaust cleanly against the cool pre-dawn sea surface. All 5 warheads detonated by proximity fuse at safe range. None reaches weapon employment range of any American ship. 4:11 a.m., 8 minutes and 22 seconds after the first Fateh 313 ignited on Qeshm Island. 8 Fateh 313 ballistic warheads, all eliminated. 34 Shad 238 loitering munitions, all neutralized. 12 Noor anti-ship missiles, 7 defeated by SLQ, 32 electronic jamming, 5 intercepted by SM-2. 54 weapons. 0 achieved hull contact on any ship. 0 American casualties. The USS Bataan. 1 water impact 140 meters off the port quarter. No structural damage, continuing transit at 11 knots. The Bataan's commanding officer keys his radio with the measured tone of a man reporting a course change. All units, Bataan, actual. All threat axes cleared. No damage, no casualties. All ships mission capable. Request authorization for Hammer Strike Hormuz. Hammer Strike Hormuz authorization arrives in 62 seconds from 5th Fleet at NSA Bahrain. At 4:12 a.m., the USS Leyte Gulf opens 16 VLS cells. 16 Tomahawk Block 5 missiles launch from the cruiser's forward deck in a 20-second ripple, heading north toward Qeshm Island and the Iranian coast. USS Porter fires 12 Tomahawks 18 seconds later. 28 Tomahawks. 3 target complexes. Target Complex 1. The 3 Fateh 313 launch positions on Qeshm Island. The surveyed coordinates were known to within 2 meters from the satellite imagery that had flagged the missile deployment 72 hours earlier. Each launch position receives 4 Tomahawk Block 5 penetrating warheads in timed sequence. The first to open the prepared firing revetment, the second and third to destroy the launch infrastructure and any missile handling equipment, the fourth with incendiary delay fusion targeted at the propellant storage associated with each site. The secondary detonations, as solid fuel propellant canisters are compromised by the warhead heat, are visible in infrared imagery to the P-8A Poseidon that has repositioned from the Gulf of Oman to a post-strike assessment orbit over the southern edge of Iranian airspace at maximum safe standoff range. 12 Tomahawks. 3 sites. 3 complete launch complexes rendered inoperable. Target Complex 2. The 2 Shahed 238 coastal launch positions north of the transit lane. Both positions had been back-computed from the E-2D's launch detection data to within a 100-meter radius, and cross-referenced against satellite imagery showing vehicle revetments and the distinctive cleared approach paths that mobile drone launchers require for vehicle positioning. 8 Tomahawks, 4 per site. The launcher vehicles themselves have dispersed per standard post-launch protocol. The fixed infrastructure, the revetment structures, the fuel storage buildings, the communications equipment whose emissions the SLQ-32 had logged, remains. Both sites receive penetrating warheads in sequence. Secondary detonations at one site confirm the intelligence assessment of additional Shahed fuel stores at that location. Target Complex 3. The IRGCN 1st Naval District's Strike Coordination Facility at Bandar Abbas. The command node that had managed tonight's 3-axis strike operation, identified by signals intelligence as the source of the encrypted command traffic that had been elevated for 72 hours before the attack and went silent at 4:02 a.m., 1 minute before the attack initiated, consistent with the pre-launch communications lockout protocol. A hardened coastal building with reinforced concrete construction and satellite communications infrastructure. 8 Tomahawks in 2 sequential 4-round salvos. The satellite arrays take the first 2 warheads. The main building takes 4 Block 5 penetrating warheads in 8-second intervals. The backup communications facility adjacent to the main building takes 2 warheads with blast fusing optimized for above-ground hardened structures. At 4:17 a.m., the USS Annapolis receives her authorization. The 4 IRGCN patrol boats that launched the Noor missiles had completed their withdrawal to a position 9 miles inside Iranian territorial waters. Their hulls now at anchor in a protected cove on Qeshm Island's northern shore, a position they had used before as a post-engagement safe harbor. Their acoustic signatures are well known to the Annapolis's sonar team. Their current position is fixed. The Annapolis fires 4 Mk-48ADC AP heavyweight torpedoes in a staggered sequence, 1 per target, wire-guided to each vessel's computed position, active Hohmann engaged at 500 meters from the predicted intercept point. 4 torpedoes, 4 patrol boats. All 4 engagement sequences are completed by 4:24 a.m. The acoustic signature of 4 rapid hull failures propagates through the Strait's shallow water column and is logged in the Annapolis's engagement record with precise timestamps. The cove where the patrol boats had sheltered is empty of surface traffic by 4:25 a.m. It does not fill again. At 4:22 a.m., 4F/A 18F Super Hornets from the USS Harry S. Truman Strike Group, airborne from the Truman's catapults at 4:08 a.m. on Hammerstrike Hormuz Taskin, deliver 16 AGM-88E advanced anti-radiation guided missiles against 4 IRGCN coastal air defense radar sites on the Iranian shore. Radar systems whose frequencies and antenna positions had been logged by the USS Porter's SLQ-32 throughout the engagement window. The coastal radar network that had been tracking the American formation through the strait goes silent in a 41-second window between 4:29 a.m. and 4:30 a.m. as the AARGM impacts walk across the 4 antenna positions. By 4:31 a.m., 28 minutes after the first Fateh 313 ignited on Qeshm Island, the Hammerstrike Hormuz counter-operation is complete across all 4 target complexes. Battle damage assessment, compiled by 5th Fleet Intelligence at 7 a.m., Qeshm Island Fateh 313 launch complex. All 3 launch positions destroyed, revetment infrastructure demolished, propellant storage destroyed with confirmed secondary detonations at all 3 sites. 2 Shahed 238 coastal launch positions. Both sites struck, fixed infrastructure destroyed, secondary detonations at one site. IRGCN 1st Naval District Strike Coordination Facility at Bandar Abbas. Communications arrays destroyed, main building assessed as severe structural damage, backup facility non-functional. 4 IRGCN Noor missile patrol boats, all 4 neutralized by submarine-launched torpedo at their post-attack shelter position on Qeshm Island's northern shore. 4 IRGCN coastal air defense radar sites, all 4 eliminated by AARGM. Estimated IRGCN personnel. Casualties, 59 to 83. American losses, 0. USS Bataan, 0 structural damage, 1 water impact 140 meters off the port quarter with no effect. USS Porter, USS Leyte Gulf, USS San Antonio, 0 damage. USS Annapolis, 0 damage. 0 marine casualties. 0 naval personnel casualties. At 4:35 a.m., the Bataan Formation clears the final navigational waypoint in the Hormuz main shipping lane and enters the Persian Gulf proper. The water ahead opens from the constrained corridor of the strait into the broader geography of the Gulf. 11 knots. North-northeast. The Bataan's flight deck crew begins position in AV-8B Harriers for the 6 a.m. combat air patrol launch. The first sortie from the Bataan's deck in Persian Gulf airspace, timed by operational planning to arrive on station as the sun rises over the Gulf's eastern shore. The Strait of Hormuz closes behind them. The same ships that entered the strait 8 hours ago emerge from it intact, fully operational, and with their mission continuing on schedule. 40,000 tons of American amphibious capability has transited the world's most strategically contested waterway and arrived in the Persian Gulf, not despite the IRGCN's efforts to prevent it, but through and past those efforts, on schedule, without a single casualty or a single hour of mission delay. The Fateh 313s are fragments on the floor of the strait. The patrol boats are on the bottom of the cove. The launch facilities are rubble. The command center is offline. The Marines below decks are standing down from the general quarters and returning to their berthing spaces. The 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit is intact, armed, and in the Persian Gulf. The Strait of Hormuz is open. It stays open every time the IRGCN tries to close it, because the forces that keep it open are better equipped, better trained, and operating inside a defensive architecture built specifically for this engagement in this geography. The Bataan turns north. Her wake cuts across the warm, shallow water. The sun is coming up.